In this video, we're going to take a look at the Wind of Death, or the Frontline Killer, as I affectionately call it. It's one of the more reliable vortex spells in that you know the direction it's going to travel. It isn't going to move around randomly all over the place. So I've created a bit of an unrealistic army here, just to make it easier to illustrate what's happening. Also the necromancers for the mana, skeleton warriors just holding in defensive formation. Now what you want to do with the Wind of Death is you want to predict where the enemy units are going to be moving to. Because the spell has a casting time, this takes a bit of skill. So you want to aim where the units are going to be when the spell is being cast. So I'm already casting the spell, or should start casting the spell. There you go. So I predicted the units to be just about there, and the spell is cast, and that's pretty much as good as it gets, because you can see that the Wind of Death knocks down the better part of the unit here, knocks down basically the entire unit here, and travels through the center. It's hard to get a better hit than this. Now, you can see how far it travels down the line. Let's see here. And it's perfectly centered in this particular case, and then it fizzles out. So after when it fizzles out, it does the least damage to the last unit and the first unit. It does the most damage to the units in the center. 1537, 1441, 1334, 1366. Now these units start out at 5,000 hit points, 5,220. So in terms of damage and reliability, the Wind of Death is second to none. Although the Wind of Death didn't really kill much. If you look at it's really weird. But these spearmen, it didn't kill anything really. But it's reduced the health of the spearmen down to a point where the leadership penalty, damage sustained, minus 68. So even with flank secure, the lord nearby, these units are going to rout. And once these units hit combat, they're also going to rout, because they've taken so much damage. So potentially, if your enemy deploys like this, you can potentially take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units out of commission. So an entire enemy frontline. Now it's a bit unrealistic because the AI is deployed in a very dense formation here, and getting off a lucky shot like this in a battle situation is very, very unlikely. It does happen, and when it happens, you've basically won, unless you mess up something royally. Now the other way of using the Wind of Death, I'm going to use the upgraded version here. Another way is, because it's so reliable, because it travels in a certain direction, you can wait until the enemy is engaged, and then you can send the Wind of Death towards the highest concentration of enemy troops. So that's here. I probably should have and there you go, yeah. There you go. So it knocks down my units as well here. It wasn't the perfect hit, but the effect is very, very noticeable. Now, still, there are 6 enemy units routing purely due to the Wind of Death. And if you look at the leadership here, damage sustained minus 124. So the Wind of Death there is about, and you can see the zombies are really quickly getting kills as well. I mean, the skeletons are really quickly getting kills as well. And of course the fear of Manfred helps. But 12 units taken out of commission, costing 2 Winds of Death. And these were near perfect hits. Not completely perfect, because I did hit some of my own men. I could have centered the spell on this unit and perhaps hit more units. But this just shows you some of the killing power. Not in terms of killing models, but in terms of removing so much health from the units that their morale goes to shit, and then they just rout off the field en masse. So Wind of Death, if you see a vampire, Manfred von Karstein, or a necromancer moving up towards the flank of your units, it might be time to start moving your units to avoid taking a direct hit from the Wind of Death. Now, the Wind of Death is very expensive, and the Wind of Death competes with some other very good spells. It competes, in the case of Monfred, it competes with Spirit Leech, and it competes with Buna. And if I have the option of using Buna against one unit of, say, Demigryph Knights or another strong enemy unit, in many cases I'm going to go with Buna on that strong unit, because Wind of Death you risk missing. With Buna you don't do as much damage to as many units, but you don't risk Buna wandering off in the distance. And I've seen so many battles where the Necromancer or the Vampire is positioned perfectly. He starts casting Wind of Death, the frontline moves, stops or moves backwards, and Wind of Death just harmlessly passes through it. Now, there is a way where you can cast Wind of Death and there's no way to get away from it. You cast it from the front and towards the unit, but then it's not as effective. It doesn't hit units, as many units. You're pretty sure to hit one unit, but in that case, Buna is just more reliable, at least if you have Manfred. And for the Necromancer, well, we'll take a look at a few alternatives there. Strength and Honor.